Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the heart of the popular and multicultural district of Pinebrook, the community center Hope Street was a refuge, a bubble of hope amidst the concrete, poverty, and sometimes violence of the streets. The red brick building, a little dated but well-maintained, welcomed hundreds of local residents every day, young people seeking discipline, parents looking for a safe place for their children, former prisoners trying to rebuild their lives, or simply curious people eager to reconnect with a community. We came here for the sports, the social activities, the artistic workshops, or simply to breathe away from the chaos of the city. The center offered boxing, basketball, theater, dance, academic support, but among all the activities offered, one program dominated all others in popularity: the karate classes, led by Aiden Blake. Aiden was a local figure. A man in his prime, barely 34 years old, but already surrounded by regional glory. A former state champion, a third Dan black belt, he had the charisma of a confident man and the energy of a lion in a too-small cage. Handsome, tall, fair-skinned, piercing eyes, he wore his black kimono with his name embroidered in gold letters like a general's uniform. He walked with natural authority, and his booming voice filled the room before he even entered. Teenagers worshipped him, especially boys, fascinated by his strength, his confidence, his way of taking up space. Girls looked at him in silence, troubled. Single mothers, many in this neighborhood, gave him shy smiles when they came to pick up their children. Aiden loved that. He fed off that constant attention, of this admiration diffuse. He needed to be in the center, always. But what he couldn't stand was indifference. And especially that of Marvin Harris, the center's concierge. Marvin was Aiden's exact opposite. A black man in his 50s, with an imposing build but a modest demeanor. His face bore the marks of time, but his eyes, dark and calm, observed the world with a kind of quiet wisdom. He was always dressed in his khaki pants, his dark blue polo shirt marked staff, and his well-maintained safety shoes. He was seen everywhere, in the hallways, in the locker rooms, sometimes on the roof. He repaired, cleaned, replaced, never complaining, never rushing. He didn't talk much. He responded to greetings, but never lingered in discussions. He didn't give his opinion. He never intervened in activities. But he was still there. And for Aiden, that was enough to annoy him. Because Marvin didn't seem impressed. Not by his trophies hanging in the hall. Not by his spectacular displays. Not by his war cries or his photos with local celebrities. Marvin walked past him as if he were just another man. And that, it was unbearable for Aiden. So sometimes he would make a dig, a mockery. In front of his students, in front of other staff members. "Do you think you're better than me because you don't say anything?" he had said one day, arms crossed, staring at Marvin who was sweeping the corridor. Mr. Invisible Man, Mr. Mop Philosopher. Laughter had broken out. Embarrassed laughter, yes, but Aiden had savored the moment. Marvin, however, hadn't responded. He'd only looked up for a moment, then shrugged, and continued sweeping. No apparent resentment. No anger. But this lack of response gnawed at Aiden more than any insult. And this Saturday morning, as the gym buzzed with activity, students warmed up, the stands filled to overflowing, Aiden felt something rise inside him. An old anger. A wounded ego. A need of domination. To show who was the strong man, here. And this time, he decided it was too much. That day, the main hall of the community center was in turmoil. It was one of those Saturdays when the sun was generous, the air smelled of soap and fresh sweat, and the gymnasium resonated with a feverish energy. Children's shouts, the slap of bare feet on the tatami mats, snatches of conversation, laughter, and encouragement filled the space like a great, dissonant but lively choir. The sun streamed through the building's large windows, casting rectangles of golden light onto the pale green tatami mats. The students, concentrating, rehearsed their urse, linking movements with admired discipline. The coaches circulated among themselves, correcting postures, rectifying guards, gently tapping shoulders for encouragement. It was an orderly, almost choreographic spectacle. A place of structure in an often unstable world. Meanwhile, in the adjacent corridor, Marvin Harris was mopping the floor as usual. He moved slowly, methodically, sweeping the dust and moisture from the floor with steady movements. His gaze was peaceful, fixed on the ground, but his mind seemed elsewhere. He wore his black headphones, connected to an old MP3 player. It wasn't music he was listening to, Butadiaux, as always. He was used to listening to treatises on wisdom, strategy, meditation. This morning, he was immersed in The Book of Five Rings, by Miyamoto Musashi, the famous 17th-century samurai. The narrator's deep voice spoke softly into his ears. True victory is not the one you show, but the one you understand in silence. Ironic. Almost prophetic. This is when Aiden Blake saw him. The coach had just finished a demonstration to applause. He was hot, his face glistening with sweat, but his smile was wide. He was heading toward the water fountain when he spotted Marvin, alone in the hallway, headphones in his ears, sweeper in hand. A diffuse, mixing feeling ego peak, silent frustration, and desire to dominate, rose in Aiden's chest. He stopped. Straightened up. And raised his voice, loud enough for the nearby students to hear. "Hey Marvin. Won't you come in and try it? A little round for fun. Just to see what you're made of." Several heads turned. Marvin, focused on his cleaning, hadn't heard. Aiden approached, this time louder, mocking. "Marvin. I'm talking to you." The man looked up, calmly removed an earpiece. "Are you talking to me?" Aiden moved forward again, his smile broad and his air theatrical. "Yeah, I'm talking to you. I always felt like you thought you were a dangerous guy, being so quiet. Always watching people, like you had a secret. Come on, let's have fun. Just one round, friendly. Are you scared?" The tone was light, but the intention, however, was not at all. Marvin looked at him for a long time. His face remained impassive. But in his eyes, there was a spark of lucidity. He understood perfectly well what was going on here. It wasn't an invitation. It was a provocation. An attempt at public humiliation. "What if I refuse?" he asked, without raising his voice. "Then you look like a coward. But if you accept, you earn everyone's respect. A chance to shine, man. Come on, just one round. We're not filming anything. I promise." Lie. Because already, several teenagers were holding their phones, discreetly filming. Others had moved closer, curious. Silence slowly fell in the hallway. You could sense that something rare was being born. The janitor, challenged by the star coach? Marvin looked around. The young people's faces were amused. Some looked mocking. Others, a little more hesitant. He took a deep breath, then calmly placed his mop against the wall. He took off his cleaning gloves. Folded the towel he wore at his belt. Took his pants up a little at the ankles, as if to keep them from bothering him. Then he said in a calm voice, without arrogance, without distrust. "Okay. One round." There was no anger in his voice. No emotion visible on his face. But for those who knew how to observe, one thing was very clear: Marvin was coming to enter the arena, not to fight, but to teach a lesson. In the room, the atmosphere changed completely. Where a few minutes earlier there had been a mixture of carelessness and adolescent laughter, a heavy silence had settled in. It wasn't an empty silence, but waiting list, of disbelief, of tension. All eyes were fixed on the two men now face to face on the tatami. Aiden Blake, the local champion, the lion of the dojo, was still smiling, but that smile had changed. It was no longer that of a master enjoying himself, but that of a predator confident in his right to dominate. He rolled his shoulders, hopped on the spot, kicked the air, whistled through his teeth. At his feet, Marvin Harris, still dressed in his worn work pants and a simplet shirt gris, had removed his heavy safety shoes. He stood barefoot on the tatami, arms relaxed at his sides, face impassive. No warm-up. No war cry. No glance at the audience. Just one strange inner peace, almost disturbing. Aiden turned to the audience, mostly his students and a few center staff members. Look carefully, children. This is why you don't confuse a professional with a street sweeper. Muffled laughter. A few phones were raised. Some teenagers held their breath, others waited for chaos, or blood. Aiden put himself on guard. And attacked. Fast. Strong. Spectacular. A high, sharp, blade-like roundhouse kick. Followed by a series of rapid punches aimed at the torso. The sharp thuds of his feet hitting the ground, the ragged breaths of exertion, they all sounded like a serious fight. Marvin didn't move an inch. He waited until Aiden's leg passed near his left flank, simply turned the shoulders, pivoted on a silent support, and in the same fluid movement, grabbed Aiden's wrist, placed reverse arm lock, and threw him violently to the ground, as if sweeping away a dead leaf with the back of your hand. A dull noise. Breathless. And a visual shock for the whole room. Aiden sat up abruptly, his eyes wide, his mouth hanging open. He had clearly underrated his opponent, and overestimated his own status. Stroke of luck, he muttered through gritted teeth. This time he charged forward again, without restraint. He aimed for the legs. Then the throat. Then he tried a feint, a spinning hook. But every attack was effortlessly deflected. Marvin didn't hit. He accompanied, absorbed, redirected. It seemed not to resist, and yet never be touched. Then, new projection. And another one. And again. To the fourth fall Aiden lay on the ground for a moment. He was in pain. He was breathing heavily. His face was crimson, his hair matted with sweat. "Are you kidding me?" he breathed. But Marvin didn't answer. He remained silent, focused, as if he wasn't there for him. As if he were standing in prayer, hands ready to resume their dance. The fifth attack was the most violent. Aiden screamed as he charged forward, a direct blow to the face. Marvin, with a simple sidestep, avoided it, took advantage of his opponent's unbalanced energy, mentally disarmed him with a look, then grabbed him by the collar. In a gesture of almost painful elegance, he turned it around, brought it to the ground gently but authoritatively, and placed his palm against Aiden's collarbone, painlessly, but with surgical precision. Immobilized. Breathless, his eyes blank, Aiden closed his eyes. He raised a trembling hand. "I finished." He growled, his voice cracking with pride more than pain. Total silence. Even the phones had stopped filming. The world seemed frozen. Then the whisper came, a slow, discreet wave spread through the room. No one really understood what had just happened. It wasn't a fight. It was a reality lesson, a exposed, a vibration ancestral that everyone had felt in their guts. Marvin stands up without a word. He didn't boast. He doesn't smile. He turns slowly to the students, many of whom had wide eyes and trembling hands. And only then did he speak. His voice was calm, deep, and measured. Sometimes, the one who keeps quiet has simply learned to fight when it's a matter of life and death. No show. Just survival. He put his safety shoes back on, picked up his mop still leaning against the wall, and left the room without looking back. The hallway door was heard closing. And in the silence he left behind, no one dared to speak. The next morning, the whole neighborhood seemed to be talking about one thing: the unexpected fight between Marvin Harris and Aiden Blake. The video, captured by a student with his cell phone, was quickly shared on social media, racking up views at breakneck speed. First, it toured the neighborhood, past cafes, street corners, and grocery stores. It was shown with astonishment and admiration, like a precious secret. Then the video crossed the boundaries of Pinebrook. It was posted on martial arts forums, where enthusiasts debated the unknown janitor's astonishing technique and mastery. Experts praised Marvin's fluidity, precision, and mastery of composure. On Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and the hashtag silent janitor, the silent janitor, quickly went viral. Thousands of people shared, commented, and marveled at this fight that defied all stereotypes. A curious teenager, fascinated by this story, decided to find out more. He typed Marvin Harris into the search engine. What he discovered stunned the entire community. Marvin Harris, far from being a simple maintenance worker, was in reality a man with an exceptional past. Former U.S. Special Forces sergeant, having served several years in perilous missions in the Stranger. Recognized specialist in close combat and martial arts, trained in the most formidable techniques. Silver medalist at the Pan American Championship Jiu-Jitsu in 2006, an elite athlete. Volunteer teacher in centers of reintegration for minors in difficulty, passing on their knowledge to help young people find another path. Seriously injured in the knee during an operation, he had to take early retirement, but had chosen to return to a simple life, away from the spotlight. The director of the center, informed of this revelation, summoned Marvin to his office. "Why didn't you ever tell us who you were?" he asked, curiosity mixed with admiration. Marvin shrugged slowly, his face impassive, but his eyes betrayed a deep humility. "What I did in the past doesn't define who I am today. I didn't come here to shine, or to be looked at. I'm simply here to help." These words echoed in the director's head for a long time. The following Monday, a new day dawned at the center. Hope Street. A crowd of students waited at the entrance, impatient, talkative, full of hope. When Marvin arrived, the young people approached him shyly but also with new energy. They handed him a kimono, black, simple, but discreetly embroidered with his name on the chest, Sensei Marvin. A respectful silence fell. "We would like you to teach us too," said a teenager, his voice trembling with emotion. "Not just fighting. To understand. Like you." Marvin, touched by this mark of confidence, bowed his head for a moment, moved without ever losing his calm. Then, in a breath, he nodded. He never wanted to become a master again. Never sought to shine in the spotlight. But sometimes silence attracts true disciples. And this time, he decided that this silence was worth breaking. He entered the room, accompanied by a murmur of admiration, ready to transmit, not only techniques, but an art of living.